Hello again, Kevin Inouye here from Fight Designer LLC and Case Western Reserve University. I started tacking that last bit on there now that I know that some other folks in the university are actually watching this channel. I'm trying to be a little more official. That said, this is all kind of me freelancing here. This is not me speaking for anybody in official capacity. I mentioned in the last video about mocap that I was tackling a couple of technical challenges this summer that might be testing the limits of my patience with computers, if nothing else. One of them you might hear going on in the background right now, and that would be my 3D printer that I got on eBay because it was cheap, and I was like, I've been thinking about these for years. So as somebody who deals with prop weaponry on a fairly regular basis, either in my professional capacity as a choreographer or performer, or through my business where I also rent them out, the ability to produce tangible objects is obviously appealing. You know, I dabble in props construction. I have made, you know, sword hilts, and I don't make blades, but I've dabbled, especially in easier to work with materials like aluminum, things like that. I've certainly customized more than my fair share of things, and I made shields and axes and stuff like that. But, you know, there's always been some limits to how much I can just make from scratch. And the idea, the principle of 3D printing, that you can just download a file from the internet, there's all this stuff for free on Thingverse, and run it out, and then like have the object there, is so awesome. Yeah, so cool. It's like the replicator from Star Trek, except it won't make me a cup of tea, unfortunately.
Tea, Earl Grey, hot.
How's it pan out? Well, I've had a lot of issues. I've had a whole lot of plastic spaghetti, is basically what they call it, where you get these big fur balls. It's a big mess. And other things along the learning curve, and I'm still not there yet, but I've had some limited success. And so now that I have been able to produce at least a few things, I thought I'd share what some of them came out to be like. So one of the issues with me dealing with prop weaponry is that most maker spaces that I would otherwise have access to are either universities or public libraries, and either one of them generally doesn't want to have anything to do with prop weapons or anything that looks like a weapon. They just don't want you making that on their equipment. So for me, when I'm looking at like guns and knives and things like that, I kind of had to have my own, or know somebody who did. So a couple of early experiments. My experiments with miniatures for the family's D&D campaign for the kids didn't turn out so well. I'm still working on the smaller things, but some of the more simple things it did. This was originally just printed in this same kind of gray filament, this kind of stuff. So I've been starting in PETG just because that's what I could find cheap that was, you know, Amazon recommends or something like that. Turns out that was probably kind of a mistake, and it sounds like I should have been starting off with something like ABS or PLA. So I'll be switching to that next to see if that works any better. But for the moment, what I'm working with is this gray PETG plastic. And the first, one of my first successful files, sort of successful makes, has now been painted, and it is this knife. And it's a folding knife with a liner lock. Now the bend in the liner, actually I had to use my heat gun to mold it into that because it printed flat in several parts. I did have to cheat a few times. The pins, there's what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pins plus the main pin that were originally in this print, and they turned out to be just way too fragile. The larger pin that the blade pivots on was fine, but the smaller ones, any kind of sideways force, and they just snapped because that's kind of with the grain, as it were. So right now what I've got actually is just little pieces of 1/8 inch dowel with some JB Weld epoxy holding it together. So that you know, was kind of a cheat, but it still works. You know, in terms of what this can do, it's not as flexible as a rubber knife. Sometimes that's good though. You know, rubber knives, sometimes you do this and they start kind of flipping around, just looking really cheesy. But I wouldn't necessarily want to be stabbed with it, but better this than steel or aluminum. It does feel a little chintzy and fragile. I don't know how well this would survive actual stage combat use, at least for long. If there's any kind of contact, it's probably going to break fairly quick. But if what you need, for example, the last... Was it the last one or the second last one? One of the recent gigs that I had, there was a bit with a mugging and someone had a knife held up to them, and then they got a disarm kind of thing attempted, and that didn't work, and then they got choked out. And so the blade didn't actually have much actual action happen to it, but it had to look fairly decent in a close-up. And a lot of my aluminum knives are just too thick and chunky. Same with some of the rubber ones. So this is a little bit more like what I would consider, you know, stage safe, somewhere between stage safe and movie close-up acceptable, because it, you know, it does have to have a certain thickness to not cut, but it is still, I don't know how close my camera can focus here. Here we go. Right, so it is still a little bit of thickness there, and you can kind of see, but you know, that's not bad. That's not too bad. It still looks, you know, reasonably realistic in motion at least. And the nice thing about this is if I could find a file and a real knife that it was based off of, then this could be a great stunt double if I had to just have a couple of shots where I didn't feel good enough about having an actual steel blade in close proximity, or something like that. Or potentially I could even just like print out the blade and swap out the blades if I had another hilt, and that could be nice. And the other thing is that, you know, the rubber knives are all molded one piece. And so the ability to actually do this if you need to is kind of nice. It doesn't flick open nice because it doesn't have that weight to it to get a nice clip knife kind of flick very well. You got to really give it some oomph. But it's doable. And it's not bad. So, you know, I'm fairly happy. What I did for painting on this, and I'll talk about painting props in another one because I've done a lot more with that lately. But just so you know, it's a quick layer of the Plat FX flexible acrylic paint, and then some rub and buff on top of that, and then graphite powder, and then a sealant. And I'll talk a little bit more about how that process works. That's for the metallic part, and just black paint on the black flexible acrylic paint on the grip because it had to be able to bend where the liner lock is. So, you know, it's okay. It sounds plastic if you drop it on something. It doesn't sound like a real knife. But for film, that doesn't matter because you'll foley it all anyway. And I think it gets a decent amount of realism for what it is. Am I going to crank out a whole ton of these? Probably not. It took me several days to figure out how to just get it going. And then each of these prints, you know, put all the parts together that I've got here, I don't know, 7 or 8 hours of printing time, assuming it all works well. And then probably several hours of gluing and assembling and painting as well, because there's several coats of paint and things like that. So the amount of time you put in on this, if you can buy a fake plastic toy knife for 15 bucks, by all means, that's going to be worth it. I think where this is going to be more useful is in things that I just can't find cheap versions of or non-functional versions of. And so there's files on Thingverse for all sorts of, you know, obscure firearms that I can't get copies of or make doubles of easily. You know, maybe it probably wouldn't be that much harder than to figure out molding if I were about trying to make stunt doubles, but that just seemed a little more intimidating to me in terms of fumes and materials and stuff, investment, so this is what I was trying. The other example I want to share today is this sort of fake EOTech sight. And this would be an example of the gun stuff, right? Now, I have a number of rubber guns. This one actually does have sights built in, but I've got a lot of these rubber flat top M4s that have no sights. It's just a rail on the top because that's how they come. And I've seen this way too many TV shows and movies where you can tell that the people are running around like this, and there's nothing for them to aim with. There's no sights. It's just a flat top. It's like, what are you even shooting at? So, you know, one of the challenges is finding flip-up iron sights or standard iron sights that you can put on a Picatinny rail or red dot sights, things like that. Now, yeah, you can buy them. I could probably buy a cheap knockoff of this that would actually like light up for maybe 30 bucks. Might be at least mostly metal. And so that would be an option, but that adds up. This one, you know, in terms of if I can just print more of these, materials cost, you know, $4, something like that. But again, it's time, because this was also a little bit problematic. It's fragile. So when it printed, first of all, I had some printing errors here, so I had to patch some of that up. And then this top part broke off because it also was separating a little bit. That was probably a leveling issue on my part. So again, more GB weld to the rescue, and also some sheet metal. So I put sheet metal reinforcements in along the sides here, where it's got a bolt in. just because otherwise that was going to be way too fragile. And then again, some JB Weld to try and blend it, and some sanding, and some more JB Weld, and some more sanding, and some painting, and some more sanding, and some more painting. And yeah, there's a little bit of hardware in here of just the bolts holding the pieces together. And there's nothing in the middle. So it's just an open pass through, and the little fake buttons don't do anything. So it's it's not the world's best. I'm not sure it would hold up too well in a super close-up, but then again, we're generally not using rubber props in our super close-ups. We shouldn't be. This is usually more for your background. But, again, you never know exactly when your director is going to want to feature that random background person and have them walk across the camera like this. Times like that are where it can be nice to have something that can hold up a little bit more in close-up. I mean, this one I haven't drilled out the front sight or anything, so this gun would not hold up in super close-up for most angles. But, it's not bad. We'll see how durable it is. And I kind of like that it's open, that we can actually just see through it. I think that's better than having it be solid. And if this ends up feeling too weak, yes, I could glue in a clear something, or even just fill the whole thing with clear silicone, so we at least see like a little light through it. But it's got some support, and it's not going to crush. So that's kind of my big question here: is how much is this going to just break with use? There was another version of a fake EOTech sight someone had put up that didn't actually have the Picatinny rail, that I think was just solid at the bottom. It might have been a larger one. But if you just want something to like glue onto a prop permanently, that might actually be a far simpler and better option. I don't know. But yeah, so far for me at least, anything more detailed is kind of coming out kind of like that, not the best not the best quality. And what I was told by a friend of mine, Dred Glebe, who does props, is that if you want detailed stuff like miniatures, you're better off with a resin printer than with what I've got. I've got it running over there right now with trying to print a nice, simple 9mm dummy round just to see how it does at that with some of the new settings that I've tried out. Let's take a look. So yeah, not the best lighting in the world here, but you can see, and yes, whoever previously owned this particular one named it Payday. Moment. This is a CR-10 Mini, if I remember correctly. So you can see now it's gone, finished with the shell casing, and it's moving on to the bullet itself. So I started this about 20-some minutes ago, 20 to 25. And it is, according to that thing, 79% done. Now, I believe that's by number of layers. So since it's a little thinner at the top, it's probably more than 79% done. It's probably more like 82% done. But, that's a half-hour, 40-minute job just to print one fake shell casing. Actually, not shell casing, a dummy round. And yeah, you can get a pack of snap caps for $6. So, probably not the most cost efficient for some of these things. But I thought this would be a nice easy way to try and test some of the settings and dial it in. It's good to have some nice simple test projects. I did at one point when I was in Wyoming get to use a 3D printer to try and make a shotgun shell casing to see, or a shotgun dummy round to see if that would work in one of my airsoft shotguns. I think I used ABS for this, but what happened was, first time I actually tried cycling it through, the lip just completely broke off because it was just not strong enough to handle the resistance of pulling around out with the ejector. So is this the answer to all of our prop creation problems? Are we going to see nothing but 3D printed props in the future? Oh, heck no. At least not until they get a heck of a lot better and can deal in different materials and are faster and more reliable. And yeah, we're getting there. There are certainly 3D printers now that can print in metal substances, in carbon fiber, and all sorts of things like that. But between the cost point and how slow they are, I think prototyping is really where these things stand out more than mass production. So in props, there are obscure things that you sometimes have to make, that just people don't happen to have lying around. But you might be able to either make or find a file for. Whether it's, an obscure variant of the Nagant revolver, or whether it is, a particular replacement hood ornament for this vintage car that's in your thing that that doesn't exist, or you know, that you need to make something fantasy for your world that isn't recognizable. You need to make up a hood ornament for your fantasy car, for your alternate history, that isn't already somebody else's brand name, and so you need to make something that's going to be a one-off. This is going to be a lot cheaper and easier than, you know, casting something out of metal, designing it in wax or clay and then doing a casting. So here we have, now finished, our dummy round. So that was a little less than half an hour, about 29 minutes. Oh, to make one 9mm hollow point dummy round. And there we are. Just out of curiosity, let's see if it actually chambers and ejects without breaking. I'm a little skeptical about the ejecting part, and I'll probably have to poke this out from the other end. Goes in just fine. Now this is not a snap cap, so there's a decent chance that the firing pin would actually shatter it if I tried to use it as such. But let's see if it ejects. Nope. No, not really. Took a couple tries. You kind of see where it bent the feed lip a little bit as the ejector tried to push in. So yeah, like I said, not sturdy enough to actually use as snap caps. It's not an alternative for making dummy rounds in that sense, but if you just need something to like fill a box of ammo on a desk or slide things into a cowboy gun belt or something like that, sure, could do something like that. Why not? And as you can see, the resolution of this printer isn't the best. You can see the little striations, the layers, a little bit of sanding could fix that, or filling it in with something else. Those are kind of your two main options. You can either take stuff away, you can add stuff. So, you know, if I actually wanted to use this for a close-up shot or use it as a dummy round going into something, I'd need to do a little extra work on it too. And that's where it gets even more time intensive. You know, once you get this set up, yeah, you can start it up, go about your day, come back and check on it every half hour or something and make sure it's not doing anything too stupid. So it takes time, but it's not necessarily time intensive in terms of the labor end of things once you get it going. But sanding and painting and finishing and checking things and fixing the slicer files and whatever else you need to do, leveling it every other time, that's the kind of stuff that's going to take more time. It's not the answer to every question, but it's a cool toy to have, and it'll fill in some gaps, I think, in terms of what I can provide prop-wise. And hopefully, sometime over the next year or so, I'll get good enough with it that I can start doing some more detailed stuff and figure out how to really play with the settings to get the best results without having the occasional weird little lump on it like this has, because that's not in the file. It's got a couple of little lumpy bits, but hey, a lot of us do after quarantine. Maybe by next time I'll be able to paint this up. We'll see how it looks with a little paint job too. Until next time, I'm Kevin Inoue. Stay safe, look good, have fun, stay well, stay sane, and I'll talk to you later.